I've always had a soft spot in my heart for elderly couples. People who spend a lifetime together, and somehow they not only survive the trials of life, but they manage to still love each other all the way to the end. What a blessing to walk all the way to the sunset of life with someone you love, holding your hand every step of the way. Today, I'd like to share a story with you of perhaps the greatest love story never told. A soldier who promised he'd return one day, and a nurse who promised she would wait for him. A love so strong that even the Civil War couldn't tear it apart. And so with that, my friends, this is the true story of Little Angel. Our story begins in East Tennessee at the outset of the Civil War. A teenage boy named Andrew Jackson Green was living at Suggs Mill in Hawkins County with his two brothers. This was a difficult time in East Tennessee. That's right, the entire area was split in their loyalty between the Confederate and the Union forces. Indeed, churches were split and even families were split. Now, Andrew's family was no different. You see, both of his brothers had signed up for the Confederate Army, and they pleaded with Andrew to do the same. Yet, Andrew was torn between his loyalty to his brothers and his belief in the Union Army cause. And so, after much soul-searching, on the morning of September 2nd, 1863, Andrew set off on foot, bound for Camp Nelson, Kentucky, to join the 1st Battalion of the Tennessee Light Artillery Union Army. Now, his brothers were furious when they learned of his betrayal. At first, they didn't think Andrew would get too far since he had never traveled more than 50 miles from his home. But soon they realized he wasn't coming back. So the brothers were determined to bring him back, and they hired an Indian tracker to find him. Andrew was careful to cover his tracks as he traveled through the mountains. And at night he slept in hollowed-out logs to keep from being discovered. And by early December, he had finally reached Camp Nelson. The records show that he officially enlisted in the Union Army on December 30th, 1863. Now, Andrew was at a crossroads in his life. He was just 19 years old and had volunteered to fight in the very army that his brothers were fighting against. And as fate would have it, Andrew would never see his brothers again, nor would he ever learn of their fate for the rest of his life. During the winter of 1863, Andrew's battery was assigned to help protect Nashville, and the records show that by the spring of 1864, his group was reassigned to the Knoxville area. This meant that Andrew was now back in the area of his home, fighting for the Union Army. And he was about to get his real first taste of battle. On October 28, 1863, Union forces arrived in Morristown, Tennessee. They were determined to regain control of Bull's Gap Railroad. Andrew was part of the artillery battery, who were the first to fire shots into the Confederate stronghold. A full-fledged battle ensued as the Confederate artillery returned fire. Fierce hand-to-hand combat raged throughout the day as cannonballs rained down from the sky. By nightfall, the Union Army had defeated the Confederate forces and regained control of the railroad. 18 Union soldiers were injured or died, while 304 Confederate soldiers died or were injured. One of the key reasons for the Union victory was the superior artillery firepower of the Union forces. Andrew had been part of the group that fired the cannons repeatedly throughout the day. Yet he had suffered burns to both of his eyes from the powder-charged explosions of each shot, and he was nearly blind from his injuries. Andrew was taken to a makeshift hospital that was set up at a local church named Bethesda Presbyterian Church, and there he would remain until he regained his sight. Each day he was cared for by a loyal nurse named Mary Reese. She gently treated his eyes and changed his bandages each day. And although Andrew couldn't see Mary, the two would talk for hours each day, sharing their hopes and their dreams. Finally, the day came. Mary removed the bandages from Andrew's eyes, and he opened them for the first time. Andrew's vision was restored, and he immediately laid eyes on Mary for the first time. "Oh my God, you're my little angel," he said. Mary was just 17 years old, but Andrew had never seen such a beautiful girl before. Both Mary and Andrew instantly fell in love with each other. Now, Mary continued to care for Andrew, but they both knew that he would have to return to the front lines of the war. And the day that Andrew left, he vowed to return after the war was over and make Mary his wife. She vowed to wait for him. For the next year, Andrew resumed his duties and was involved in battles in the Nashville area. Once again, the cannon explosions caused severe damage to his eyes from repeatedly firing them, and he was also hospitalized. On August 3, 1865, Andrew completed his service in the Civil War and returned home to Hawkins County, nearly 2 years after he had disobeyed his brothers. His brothers never returned from the Confederate Army, and he never saw them again. For the rest of his life, he was haunted by what their fate became. However, a year later in 1866, Andrew returned to Mary, and he asked her to be his wife. Mary and Andrew were married, and they raised 6 children on a 100-acre farm in Hamlin County that Andrew purchased with his war pension. By the time Andrew was in his mid-50s, he had went completely blind from his war injuries. Yet, Mary continued to care for him, and Andrew's children built a series of ropes that went from the home to each outbuilding so Andrew could continue working on his farm even after he went blind. Even with his disability, their marriage was full of mutual respect and kindness and happiness. Andrew and Mary Green were married for 65 years until Andrew died in 1931. His little angel, Mary, was buried beside him 6 years later in Dover Presbyterian Church in Morristown, Tennessee. Thank you for watching this video and your support of the preservation of Appalachian history. You can support this channel by going to the AppalachianStoryteller.com. There you'll find Appalachian-made candles, 100% locally produced, right here in East Tennessee. Thanks for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it, I hope you'll consider subscribing to this channel, where I share all sorts of Appalachian history and storytelling. Till next time, my friends.